Since the law was put into effect banning euthanasia in the shelters, what we've had was kind of obvious is what was going to happen is we now have an overpopulation of dogs inside the shelters. So these no-kill shelters are becoming kind of like hoarding facilities. Some of them are actually paying people to come and adopt animals, anywhere from 1,000 to 4,000 NT. And what that's doing is creating this, you have a surplus of animals in the shelters that are now being kind of thrown out into families that aren't necessarily prepared for adoptions. And a lot of those dogs end up back on the streets or into not so nice environments because people are actually capitalizing on getting paid to adopt an animal. We charge people to adopt from us because we want them to be sincere about their adoptions, and we provide them with vaccines and things that they need. But by giving incentives, by paying people 1,000 or 4,000 NT to adopt a dog, you're actually encouraging people to come and adopt animals that aren't ready to adopt animals. So they're increasing their adoptions, but those dogs and cats are just ending up back in the streets. So it's not a solution. I'm an animal rights activist. I'm kind of a no-kill guy. I've always been a no-kill guy, but at the same time, I'm a practical realist. And by banning euthanasia, you're just creating a nightmare for hundreds of thousands of dogs all over the country. So while I'm not an advocate of killing, I'm definitely not an advocate of killing, I am an advocate of finding practical solutions, and just making a blanket statement that all shelters need to be no-kill is not a practical solution because you're actually committing a lot of those dogs to a life of misery. So it's a tough question. It's not black or white, you know, there's a lot of gray in there. I wish there was a black and white answer, but there really isn't, other than, you know, stop buying dogs from the pet shops, stop promoting puppy mills by buying dogs in pet shops, and adopt or foster dogs from places like ours or SPCA, which is much more ethical and responsible. With the situation of the overcrowding and the ban on euthanasia, I think the government only has one choice. They need to endorse and support CNR programs or TNR programs, which is catch, neuter, release or trap, neuter, release, around the country of Taiwan. There should be an active government incentive to help actually groups like ours and SPCA and other groups to go out and neuter and release the stray or the street animals. That's really the only thing they can do, aside from putting the screws to the pet shops that are selling puppy mill dogs. The pet shops that sell dogs and cats are not part of the solution, they're part of the problem. The pet shops that have adoptions and fosters from strays or street animals or shelters like ours, they're part of the solution. So there's about 13,000 registered breeders in Taiwan, and they're breeding approximately 200,000 puppies a year for the pet shop industry. I would say probably more than 50% of those dogs bred either die in the pet shops because they've been inbred and they're unhealthy, or they're dumped in the streets. So I would assume that 100,000 dogs a year, because of the pet industry, are getting dumped. So we need to kind of figure out a way to crack down on that. Yeah. The government should shut down any attempts to breed large dogs and I should say cold climate dogs, huskies, mastiffs, Great Danes. These dogs do not belong here. And what happens is they're bought when they're puppies and they're really cute, and then they end up dumped on the streets, and they end up coming to live with us. And then we have to raise them and we have to try and adopt them out. So again, it's a vicious cycle that the government could really easily crack down on by shutting down the licenses for breeding these big dogs. So that's one thing the government can do. Another thing that people can do is stop shopping. Don't buy dogs and cats. You know, go to your shelters, go to the pet shops that do adoptions and fosters, and adopt a beautiful dog or a cat.